Hi, afternoon. Can you hear me? Is it clear? Can you hear me? Okay. Let's wait for a while. Thanks for the ID. Okay, thanks, guys. Let's wait for a while. We still have 5 more minutes to 3 o'clock. Okay, let's see how many of you now. Still 80 plus, huh? Let's wait for a while. Please remind your friends if they have forgotten. Just share with them the link so that they can come in. I know some may not be able to make it. That is fine as long as you view the video later. I have a feeling I'm feeling the MCO may be relaxed after 28. It may be possible to go back to the campus. Maybe, I'm not sure, but most likely we can't have our big classes. Most likely uh, we may have to, they may only allow small classes, I don't know, because it seems like restriction is still in place for big gathering. So it may be the case that those smaller classes where that require small gathering together, like for example, those who study music, those who study cooking, need to be together to do the practical, or even those who do scientific lab, the chemistry and biology. Um, you may you may have to you may have to um, go to the school. Is it very soft? Can you hear me now? Am I very soft? Is the voice very soft? This is the maximum. Don't worry, after when I start teaching, I will speak very loudly. Let me see, 120, 125. Hmm. Testing. I think that's much better now. Okay, are we ready? Shall we start? Let me know if you are ready. We shall start. So, if you are ready, let me know. You say yes. So I will start. Today, we will be studying about Immanuel Kant, Kantian ethics. Then we will be studying William David Ross' Prima Facie Duty. And finally, we will be studying virtue ethics. Okay, yeah. So now you can hear me, huh? Just now I don't know why the volume is a bit lower, so I set it higher. Strong wind is because I I have the fan blowing at me because it's quite hot. But you can hear my voice, right? You can hear my voice, right? Okay, I shall start. So, what I have done is I have taken the same slides that we have on Immanuel Kant, on William David Ross' Prima Facie Duty, and on virtue ethics. I have summarized a little bit, streamlined it a little bit so that it's a bit shorter. The long version, you can go and see the pre-recorded video on my padlet. So this is Immanuel Kant, one of the greatest philosopher during the 18th century, and he is famous for many things. And one of his breakthrough in ethical thinking in philosophy is in his ethical theories. And his ethical theory circle around this idea of the categorical imperative. So to understand the categorical imperative, you have to understand the location of Kant within the stream of philosophical history. Kant was at the prime during the Enlightenment period. This was a time where man started to use reason alone to order his own life, to manage his own life, to control his own destiny. And for Immanuel Kant, his moral theory is organized around the idea that to be rational and to be moral are one and the same thing, meaning a rational person is a moral person. If you behave rationally, you are behaving morally. So for Immanuel Kant, two priority is important when we talk about man. Man as the only creature that is rational, and man must be absolutely free, autonomous. So this is the claim that only man is rational, and thus only man is moral, because he equates morality and rationality. So when we compare man with animals and compare with plants and inanimate object like a table, chair, a stone, a river or wind, any other things, man is unique in the sense that he is the only creature that is rational, and therefore there is a moral dimension to man. And according to because of this, right, because of this assumption about man being rational and therefore the only creature that is moral agent, therefore man is of infinite worth. And the idea of human rights as encompassed in the United Nations Agreement on Human Rights, Declaration of Human Rights, is also based on this foundation that man inherently has infinite worth, of infinite dignity, so should be treated with dignity and worth accordingly. So men have a good will if your intention is a self-conscious respect and obedience to a moral law you have given yourself. Now, it is not the idea of you in compliance with an external law like external rules or external regulation that will entail you being lack of autonomy, you see. So to be fully autonomous and to exhibit this will that is good, you should consciously make an effort to obey a moral law that you have given yourself. This is where you are totally rational and totally free. And this obedience is out of a sense of duty. You see, Kantian ethics is duty bound. It's a duty ethics, deontology, right? The idea is not whether the consequence is good or bad. The idea is that the act itself is good or is bad. So if you act based on a moral law that you have given yourself, then that act will be considered good. It is ethical. So what is this thing called moral law? So according to Kant, he gave these two formulations of the categorical imperative. The moral law is the categorical imperative. And what is this thing called the categorical imperative? So he gave two definitions here, or he called it the formulation, two formulations. The first formulation goes like this: act only on the maxim. Maxim is the principle. Act only on the principle, the maxim, whereby you can at the same time will make sure that this act, the principle of that act, can become a universal law. View that it should become a universal law. So the idea is that when you want to perform an act, you want to know whether that act is ethical or not. You don't look at the outcome. You look at whether this act, the principle of doing this act or performing this act, if it become a universal law, will this be, is this capable of being universalized? So you trying to universalize this principle of the act without contradiction. Contradiction would be something that's irrational, isn't it? Because rationality does not have contradiction. Contradiction, remember the last time when we talked about ethical relativism, we said that if you self-contradict, if you self-defeat, right? If an idea is self-defeating, it goes like this. If I claim that I cannot speak to you in English, if I make this statement that I cannot speak to you in English, can you see that? Immediately you will ask me, sir, are you not speaking in English now? When you make that statement, right? So meaning I self-defeat. That this is self-defeating statement. It contradicts itself. So rationality does not contradict. So the idea is that when you universalize the principle of an act that you want to perform, when it becomes a universal law, it must not lead to any contradiction, number one. Number two, when you universalize the principle of your act, it must not prioritize your own interest. Because we are talking about a rational man. Will a rational man accept the principle of an act that can become a universal law? Will the rational man accept this universal law or not? You are not talking about you as a student or as a husband or as a girlfriend or as a wife or as a daughter. You are talking about you as a rational human being. Will you be able to accept this universal law or not? And this is not a speculation about consequences. So meaning we are not interested at all at whether the act will lead to certain consequence that is good or bad. Consequences of the act is not important at all. Outcome are not relevant to deontology, to Kantian ethics. So the second way to understand the categorical imperative is this. According to Kant, your action must be in such a way that you always treat humanity, treat other people, treat everyone including yourself. Whether in your own person, yourself, or in the person of any other people, never simply as a means. Meaning, don't use people as a means, as the goal of your action, you see. Don't use people. But always at the same time as an end, meaning treat people as an end in themselves, never as a mean only. Okay? In simple language, the idea is that don't use people. Don't use people as an instrument to achieve something. But treat people with dignity because they are worthy of being treated in this way as an end in themselves. So treat people as ends, respecting the intrinsic dignity and worth of man. Don't merely use people. Okay? Don't merely use people. So when you apply the two formulation of the categorical imperative correctly, it will lead to the same decision, meaning an act that can be universalized and an act that does not treat people merely as means but always as ends in themselves. That will be an act that is ethical to do. It will not be the case that when you apply these two formulation into an act and you find that formulation 1 say ethical, formulation to say unethical. No, it's not. That cannot be the case because this is based on a rational foundation. Both application of the formulation will lead to the same conclusion. Okay, there are two important questions that we need to address because it is widely misunderstood, these two questions. So the question is this: is the categorical imperative the same as the golden rule? If you remember our discussion about the golden rule in our earlier recorded session, golden rule is like this: do to others what you want others do to you. Of course, this golden rule comes from Jesus. Jesus himself is the one who said, do to others what you want others do to you. Predecessor of this golden rule, earlier than that, about maybe 500 years, I think, was Confucius, who said, do not do to others what you do not want others do to you. Of course, do not do to others means assume that you don't do to others that is what you don't want. You don't want harm, you don't want harm to be done to you. Do to others what you want others do to you is doing something that is positive, doing something that is good, that is more demanding than not doing something harmful to others. So is this golden rule the same as the categorical imperative? I want to emphasize to you, no, they are not the same. And there are a lot of blogs and websites that says, yeah, they're the same, But I'm trying to explain to you that this is not the same because the golden rule depends on contingent variables, depend on how I would like to be treated, how I would like to be treated. But the categorical imperative is not how I like to be treated. The categorical imperative depends on a rational man, not I, no you, because do to others what you want others do to you, right? So for me, I may want others to do certain things for me. For you, you may want others to do certain things for you. See, it may be different. You may enjoy different things. I may enjoy different things. So I would like other people to do to me the different things, right? But the categorical imperative does not depend on any such contingent variables. Does not depend on any contingent facts like what you prefer to be done to you. So the categorical imperative is a thought experiment based on what a rational man would do, whereas the golden rule depends on what you would have others do to you. Because different people would have others do to them differently, you see. So they are not the same. Don't make the confusion. Next, the second important question is this. I always tend to be asked this question. If autonomy means acting according to a moral law I have given myself, you are giving yourself a moral law, isn't it? So the question now becomes, wouldn't different people give themselves different moral laws? Wouldn't that be the case, right? Now, it is not the case. You will not arrive at different morality because the categorical imperative is based on what a rational man would arrive at in the conclusion. This is there because there is only one type of rationality. For example, if 1 + 1 is 2, it will be universal that everyone will arrive at the same conclusion, you see. So anyone who exercise rationality will arrive at the same conclusion, meaning you will arrive at the same moral law that is universalized. Okay, so it will not be the case that everyone will arrive at different moral law. Everyone will arrive at the same moral law because we are talking about a rational man, not individual contingencies. What are the limitations of the Kantian ethics? Although Kantian ethics has a very strong following, but in some cases it is too rigid, too extreme in the claim because it is claiming, if you look at the outline of the ethical theory that I've given you, it is a theory that says there is a claim of absolute morality. So Kant ethic is too extreme insofar as it excludes emotion from moral decision making and makes duty paramount. It is only out of a sense of duty alone that an act is right and wrong. So whether you enjoy doing something good or you don't enjoy it, makes no difference. But that would be too extreme. Of course, when we make decision, our emotion are involved. And Kant fails to distinguish between accepting oneself from a rule and qualifying a rule on the basis of exception. Now, this is a bit complicated, because Kant says the categorical imperative is exceptionless. There's no exception to the case. At all time, in all places, if something is wrong, it must be wrong universally. But for us, we are saying that sometimes there are some exceptions, we can allow some exception to be acceptable. But Kant will imagine that you are giving yourself an exception. You are giving yourself, you are not giving others an exception. So this is not the case. This is not the case. Furthermore, it is not always clear when people are treated as ends and merely as means. So if we say don't use people merely as means, right? At what point do we consider that to be the case? How do we draw the line, you see? So it's very difficult to determine, are we now performing an act that is treating people as merely as means? You can't decide that very easily. So it's not clear. Furthermore, are moral absolute unqualified? Unqualified absolutism, remember? This is what Kant is claiming. Because we say that in some cases, we will say that moral absolute can be of certain rank. There's a rank order in terms of moral absolute. Some moral decision or moral claim are more important than others. So, for example, will you tell a lie to save a life? Telling truth is important, but isn't saving life more important than telling the truth? So sometimes you have to tell a lie just to save a life. Life isn't it? Tell a lie just to save a life. Most people will say this to be acceptable, but Kant say no. Okay. Now, it's a bit heavy, so I want to ask, do you all have any question about Immanuel Kant? Please let me know if you have any question about Kantian ethics. Anyone have any question about Kantian ethics? Two weeks from now, we will apply Kantian ethics. We will apply in the case of bribery. So is the giving and taking of bribe acceptable or not acceptable? Kantian ethics may be one of the most difficult theory to understand. Another difficult theory is actually next week I will teach you. Rawls' theory of distributive justice is a bit more difficult. Okay, I think you may not have any question. If you have any question, please write down, email me, WhatsApp me, or you can post it afterward. Let me move on to the next ethical theory. Next ethical theory is deontology. Deontology. Next deontological theory is Prima Facie Duty. The second limitation of Kantian ethics. Second limitation says, fail to distinguish between accepting oneself, meaning make an exception for you, meaning you must not tell a lie, but for me I can. So that is making exception for oneself, is it? Everyone cannot tell a lie, but for me I can tell a lie. Can you see that? Okay, that's making exception to the rule. But qualifying a rule with an exception, you are trying to say that the rule is that at all times we want to tell the truth. But sometimes when there is a conflict in moral absolute, we go for the higher rank absolute. For example, isn't it better to save a life than to tell the truth? Can you see that? You are making an exception to the rule, not making an exception for yourself. Okay, that's the idea. But Kant is saying, oh, you are actually making an exception for yourself. You are saying that for you, sometimes you tell a lie to save a life. But we are not claiming that. Kant would say that. But we are not claiming that. We are claiming that sometimes it is right to uh, break a lower ranked moral rule to save a life. For example, a higher rank to obey a higher rank moral rule. Because there's always a conflict, right, of two moral absolute. We will say that we rank it first. We obey the most important one first. That will be making an exception to the case. We are not making exception for yourself. You are making exception to the rule. Okay, making exception to the rule, not making exception for yourself. You see. Yes, correct. Oscar T. According to Kant, all moral laws are equally important, of the same force of authority. According to Kant, all the moral laws are equally the same strength. So, according to Kant, there will not be a conflict. There will not be a conflict. Okay. Any more question? Any more question? Okay, let's do prima facie duty, but just give me 1 minute. I want to get something. Okay, so prima facie duty originated from this British philosopher William David Ross. He held that our moral experience are too complex to be reduced to the principle of utility or to the categorical imperative. Too complex. And in a normal situation, no one would start to rationalize and think that the principle of my act will it be accepted by all rational men. You know, no one do such thing. Okay, only in critical dilemma, moral dilemma, do we start to slow down and think about such thing. In normal daily life, we don't go and analyze things like that. We don't go and calculate how much utility an act will produce. We don't do such thing. So according to William Ross, he says moral duties arise mostly from our relationship with others. As the pre-recorded video will tell you that, for example, because of my relationship with you as a student, so I have some obligations to teach you correctly, to spend time and make an effort to show you what to learn, to teach you well. So I have some duties owed to you, you see. You as a student to me, you also owe me some duties in terms of respecting me as a teacher, following instruction and so on. So moral duties arise mostly from our relationship. If you think further a little bit, not only do I have a relationship with you as a student to me, I'm also a husband to my wife. I'm a father to my children. I'm an employee to somewhere and so on. So I have multiple relationships, you see. So as a result, we have various duties that oftentimes come into conflict with each other, you see. So because of the multiple relationship that arise from some obligation that may conflict. As a result of such conflict, there is no universal rules for the resolution of this kind of conflict of duties. There's no right universal law that you can say, I apply this and therefore it's right, you know. So it says different situations generate different priorities in the orders of duty. Now, this is where the ranking of the duties come into place. Given a certain particular situation, there will be some ranking in priorities of your duties. Okay, so the idea is that we intuitively, this is important, we intuitively know which duty is most incumbent. You see, this is a word I'm using, incumbent. Is most necessary, is most pressing on me, is most demanding on me to perform first. So intuitively, we will know that in certain circumstances, we will know that doing this is right, doing that is wrong. So performing other duties first would be immoral. I'll give you some example. Now, for example, I'm teaching you a lesson here. So I'm performing a duty, towards you in terms of delivering some lesson here. But if my daughter has an accident, very serious, I need to go and take care of her. Now, can you see that my duty towards my daughter has become more incumbent, become more necessary for me to perform first? There will be a shifting as circumstances change, it will shift. So as a result of this, I would have to go and take care of my daughter first. Intuitively, I will know that I don't need to calculate how much harm, how much benefit I will gain. I wouldn't have to think about what if this principle of helping my daughter, can it be universalized? Will a rational man accept? No one will do such thing, isn't it? The idea is that according to William D. Rose, we intuitively know in a certain situation, certain obligation is more incumbent, more demanding, more necessary for me to act now, that is the idea of prima facie duty. And taking care of my daughter become more incumbent now, but in a different situation, it will not be. If the scenario change, for example, I'm in a situation where I'm taking care of my children are safe, they're okay, and a dog is harmed, knocked by a car, there's an accident. So it becomes obvious to me that helping the dog would be the right thing to do now, you see. So in different situation, you'll be confronted with different obligation that you will intuitively know which one is most important. So according to William D. Rose, there are basically these 7 general obligation or duty that we face in general. So one is duty of non-maleficent, duty of beneficent, doing something good, duty of fidelity, being faithful, duty of reparation, if you've done something wrong, you have to pay back your wrongdoing, duty of gratitude, showing gratitude for people's positive act towards you, being fair to others, duty of justice, duty of self, you have a duty to improve yourself. So in general, we will say that duty of non-maleficent is usually most important in most circumstances. We have a duty not to cause harm to others. Usually, if all things being equal, the duty of non-maleficence must be most incumbent to us in constantly the case, not to cause harm to others. This theory is very straightforward. Intuitively, we also think that, yeah, it's true. That's how we behave, you see. That's how we behave. So Rawls maintained that, but there are some limitations. So Rawls maintained that the moral truths are known intuitively, meaning without rationalizing, without justification. because they are self-evident, you see, self-evident. So when you explain your action given a different circumstances, people will say, yeah, it's the right thing to do, you know. So critic question whether intuition is really is always a reliable guide for establishing moral truth. They say that appeals to intuition should be critically assessed, meaning it may be unreliable. Intuitively, you will think that it is the right thing to do. For me, intuitively, it may be the wrong thing. So there is this argument that without a rational foundation for argument, intuition itself is not so reliable. Number two, it is not always clear. It is not always a clear guide. It's not always a clear guide on how issues with conflicting rights and principles ought to be resolved. So when there is a conflict of duties, it's not so clear how people normally resolve this kind of conflict of duties, except for appealing to intuition itself. So there's a lack of objective reasoning to describe, to explain why would one duty suddenly become more important than other than just saying that intuitively I know. Okay, so the limitation tells us that it is not so robust as a guide in terms of ethical justification of why certain duty is more incumbent than other duties. Okay, so this is Ross' Prima Facie Duty. Again, I will emphasize all normative theory, including Ross' Prima Facie Duty and Kantian ethics, has their strengths and their weaknesses. So these are some of the weaknesses, some limitation. Please ask me some question. Anyone? Do you have any question you want to ask me? Before I continue to the last ethical theory. Now, once I complete the last normative theory, remember to ask me which one do I think is most relevant, is the strongest normative theory that can be applicable in most situations. So ask me any question first. Do you have any question about Prima Facie Duty? Do you have any question about Prima Facie Duty before I continue? Let me know. I give you a few minutes. I hope you can still hear me. Give me some questions if you have any doubt in your mind before I move on. Before I move on to the last section on virtue ethics. So, Kantian ethics and Prima Facie Duty, these two sets of these two normative theories are both non-consequential ethics, you see. So even Prima Facie Duty talk about the act itself, it doesn't talk about the consequence of those acts. So the act is right because you have a Prima Facie Duty to perform those duties. It's prima facie on you to perform those duties because it's most incumbent on you given that situation. So it's not telling you that because saving life is important. You know, they're not saying that. They're saying that because the act itself is most incumbent on you, most necessary for you to perform. Okay, no question. Let me move on to the last normative theory. Now we have studied consequentialism, ethics of doing, ethics of doing in terms of outcome. The outcome itself is how you determine what is right and wrong. In terms of consequentialism, we say there are two ethical theories: ethical egoism and utilitarianism. And non-consequential ethics are those ethical theories that says the ethics of doing look at what you do, not look at the consequence, not based on the outcome. So the non-consequential ethics, or it is also called deontology, duty-bound ethics, look at the act itself. So there are two ethical theories just now we just covered: Kantian ethics and Prima Facie Duty. Now, this last normative theory says that it is not what you do that is important to determine what is right and wrong. It is who you are. Can you see? It is who you are. Let me show you. Oh, I think I turned it off. Let me show you my Padlet account. I close it, unfortunately. Quick one, my Padlet. I shouldn't have logged out. Let me see. Okay. So, based on this outline, right? Let me show you the outline. It's loading, just take a while. Okay. Let me show you this. Sorry, it's loading. Just take a bit longer. Okay. Okay, so ethics of doing, right and wrong is related to your action, what you do. So this is looking at consequential ethics, this non-consequential ethics. Now we are saying that what is right and wrong depends on your character, who you are, your character. So this is virtue ethics. So this is Plato, Socrates, and Aristotle. The more famous of the three in terms of virtue ethics is actually Aristotle, or they sometimes call Aristotelian ethics. But in recent years, the revival of virtue ethics comes from this lady called Elizabeth Anscombe. In 1958, she published an article called Modern Moral Philosophy, where she said that the kind of normative theories that we are applying, we are preoccupied with today, are very law-based, law-type, law conception of ethics. And this kind of law conception of ethics deal exclusively with obligation and duty, very legalistic. She actually, Anscombe, and now later, of course, Alistair McIntyre follows the footsteps of Elizabeth Anscombe. She said, Elizabeth Anscombe says that the reliance upon universally applied principles such as John Stuart Mill's utilitarianism and Kant's deontology, this kind of dependence on universal principle result in a very rigid moral code of conduct. It means that you do this is right, do that is wrong. So it's very rigid, very black and white. That is not realistic to what we experience in real life. So the question is, ask yourself, do we think of moral laws to guide our daily action? Or only in some dilemma do we start to rationalize? Do we do that? Do we stop and calculate what's the cost and benefit in applying utilitarianism, in doing an act? We don't do that, right? Normally we don't do that. It's not how we behave in reality. So the three questions that's important for virtue ethics is like this. We are looking at what does a virtuous person look like. If you say a person is virtuous, a person is of high moral integrity, what does he look like? Who exhibit this kind of a virtuous person? And then how do we become a virtuous person? If we say that this is an ideal person, how do we become like that? How do we become more virtuous? Become better and better in terms of a virtuous person. So is the action something a virtuous person is likely to do? So when you are about to perform some act, when you are about to make certain decision, you ask the question, right? Is this kind of an act or decision in line with what a virtuous, a person of high moral integrity will perform. So the example here I've given you, how do you become a virtuous person? This is based on the Aristotelian ethics that is taught by the Greek philosopher Aristotle. He says that when we perform an act frequently, that act becomes part of our habit. When we perform this habit constantly, it will shape our character, who we are. Because of who we are, we are disposed or predisposed to behave in certain manner. For example, when we were young, we were always being taught by our parents to tell the truth, to be disciplined, to be orderly, to be tidy, to be honest. Okay, and because of this, habitually we do that. We are very organized. We plan. We tell the truth. We take care of one another. We help one another. We are loyal to our friends. These are the kind of things, the behavior that we are taught. And as a result of our habit, over the years, this is how we form our character. Our character is formed. We become a person of high moral integrity. We are honest. We are organized. Habitually, we know we tend to do such things. We are loyal to our friends. We are faithful to in our friendship. We don't backstab. We love fellow human beings and so on. So this becomes who we are. As a result of who we are, we tend to behave in similar manner. You see, we are predisposed to act in that manner all the time. This is how you become a virtuous person, through repeating certain act in small. When we say that when we are faithful in small things, over time you become faithful in big things. You see, habitually you cultivate this kind of virtue. You see, so if you are not faithful in small things, habitually you become not faithful in big things. You take a little bit, right? So you slowly over time you take $2 billion in suitcase at home, for example. So it become a vice instead of becoming a virtue. So an ethical act form a habit that shape your character, that predispose you to behave in an ethical manner. And some of these virtues that we adopt, that we habitually perform, being prudent, being courageous, having self-control and being fair, exhibiting love, having faith, and hope for better in the future, and so on. This kind of virtue will tend to develop us having this character of high moral character. Okay, so to develop slightly a bit further, particularly the virtue ethics as recognized by Alasdair MacIntyre. Alasdair MacIntyre is the only philosopher among all that we have discussed so far who is alive. He's 91 years old today. So he says the kind of virtues that we should develop are through shared practices. Let's say if we say that fathers should love their children, the love of the family, to keeping this core unit together. This kind of virtue should be shared. Everyone should practice the same virtues. And this kind of virtue, if you practice them, you develop this virtue, you will become, this kind of virtue will sustain communities, will build communities, will strengthen the communities. It won't disintegrate the communities. It will strengthen communities like the family. It will strengthen practices like being honest. It will strengthen certain profession, become better managers, become better accountants, become better in terms of marketing, strengthen each other, and other institutions like government bodies and so on. So the practice of virtue that is a shared practice by everyone will strengthen the whole community. And certain action itself they have internal good as a consequence and external good as a consequence. We are not looking at the consequence, remember. This is looking at predominantly who you are, right? So internal good, according to Alistair McIntyre, is a direct good. For example, the giving to charity actually is a direct good because it helps others. So intention for internal good shows or develops virtues in characters. It develops you in terms of virtue in character. But an action has an external good as well. For example, indirect good. The giving of charity may make you famous. People recognize, wow, this guy is so famous. You know, he gave so much for charity. But this is an external good, indirect. So intention for external good, meaning if you give to charity just for the fame of it, it shows to you that you are developing vice. You have vice in your character. You have greed. You have this desire for fame, you know. So it does not exhibit to others that you are developing virtues. So those kind of act that develop virtues will be in with intention to develop internal good action that promote the well-being of others. That shows that you are a virtuous person. This is Alistair McIntyre in terms of his idea of virtue ethics, not so much as an individual practice, but as a shared practice in community. Everyone should practice this kind of virtue ethics. So what are some limitations of virtue ethics? It does not provide clear guidance on what to do in a moral dilemma. We only say that what would you imagine a virtuous person would do if the virtuous person is faced in this kind of dilemma. It does not give you a clear do this, don't do that guideline. So it's not so clear as a guiding normative theory in terms of deciding on what's the right thing to do in a dilemma. And there's no general agreement on what the virtues are. The virtues I've given you here, example, the top 4 virtues here, for simplicity's sake, I take this from Plato, the 4 cardinal virtues. But if you ask Aristotle, he will have another set of virtues. So these 3 are Judeo-Christian virtues, love, faith, and hope. So different people have different tradition or different religion will have different set of virtues, you see. So there's no one set of widely agreed virtues for us to adopt. So if we don't have a widely agreed upon virtues, how do we develop our character in that case? So these are the 2 limitations of virtue ethics. Okay, what do you think about this normative theory? Do you think that you can apply this in the workplace? Do you think that this theory is difficult to apply when you are making decision? What do you think? Is it a very demanding theory? Is it something that reflect reality? Is how people behave, whether it's ethical or unethical? In reality, it's out of your character, your action is ethical or unethical. So we are saying that a person of high moral integrity, high virtuous person, will tend to behave in the right manner, in ways that are ethical. And a person who is not of high moral integrity, no low virtuous character, will or a person of vice will tend to behave unethically in their behavior, in their dealings with others. So that is basically how this virtue ethics is being applied. Okay, any questions you want to ask me about virtue ethics? Okay, yep. Do prima facie duty and virtue ethics have some similarities? They both will respond to the act based on personality. No. The prima facie duty is based on relationship because of your relationship with others, not your personality, your relationship with others. And as a result of this relationship, there arise some duties or some obligation. and we always have this set of obligations with us, duties with us. We carry with us a whole set of duties, right? But when we are faced in certain circumstances, certain situation, some duties become more important than others. The right thing to do, based on William D. Rose, intuitively you should perform that duty that is most incumbent, most necessary for you to do intuitively. But for virtue ethics, because of who you are, you have been nurtured, you have developed your character from young until now, because of your parents, your relative, your senior in your family, or because of certain role model that you always want to emulate. It may be from your religion, you want to follow Jesus. And so for those who are Buddhists, they want to follow Buddha, for example, some principles. You have certain role model that you want to follow towards. So this is who you are. When you're faced in certain situation, you will think of yourself, will a virtuous person, will my role model behave in such a way? Will my father, who is a virtuous person, behave in such a way? You're always asking this, will a virtuous person behave? Will do this or not? Will the virtuous person do that or not? Will I do this or not? So you're asking, what will a person of high moral integrity do? You are not asking which duty is most incumbent. You're asking, based on the character of who I am, who I want to be, will this act reflect who I am or who I want to become? And that is the two different normative theory. Of course, I'm not saying that prima facie duty will lead you to do certain thing that is right, and virtue ethics will lead you to do other things that is right. It is not the case. In most situation, you will find that there's a convergence in terms of the outcome in the application of theory. You will find that the application of virtue ethics, of prima facie duty, of Kantian ethics, they tend to arrive at the same conclusion. It means that they are telling, the three normative theory is telling you that do this is right. They tend to converge. The normative theory tend to come to the same conclusion. Okay, any more question, guys? Any more question you want to ask me? Any more question? Now, I want to tell you which ethical theories I find. Okay, wait. There are some question here. But sir, if someone has been growing up with a short temper, does that mean he or she also a virtuous person? Okay. Mariam, short temper, it means that you are being angry easily. You have some emotional instability. It may mean that you, if you may have a short temper that may cause harm to others. You may offend people, you may hurt people's feelings, and so on, right? That may be a wrong thing to do. So what does it mean? It means that you have to start to control yourself. You need to apply this. You need to start to act in a way that habitually you will bring your temper into control. It will mean that you will tend to behave in a way that you will harm people. You may cause harm to others, Mariam. So, to be virtuous in this case, right? To be better, to improve yourself, right? To become a better person, to be a virtuous person. So you will start to perform acts that will rein in your temper. For example, try and habitually control your temper. Learn to practice certain technique to control your temper, so that it becomes part of you to be more temperate. So what Aristotle, which I have not shown you, did is like this. Aristotle will say this. You now have a very bad temper. You are leaning on one side. Okay. On the other side, you are very like cold-blooded. So you don't have any feeling at all. No high temper, no low temper. You are like very melancholic. You have no expression at all. So actually, in between is the ideal, the golden mean, the best place to be. So in order to move to the ideal situation, the golden mean, you have to be like a plank of wood that is warped towards this side, right? You have to warp it toward that side. You have to push the plank, bend it toward this side habitually, control your temper, cool down, so that over time when you release, you the plank will go to the middle. You are back to in the middle portion where there is temperaments. You have self control of yourself. I hope you understand that. But if you don't understand, you can actually Google a little bit and find out how the Aristotelian virtue ethics understand the golden mean in terms of controlling of your temper. So is Kantian ethics, this Samuel? Kantian ethics based on what you do, prima facie based on relationship with others, and normative virtue ethics based on who you are. Okay, Kantian ethics is based on what you do in terms of your duty. The same, the same with prima facie duty. Prima facie duty, you see, the theory itself tells you that it's also a duty that arises from your relationship, not purely just relationship, duty that arises out of your relationship, your obligation because of your relationship. Kant is saying that your duty that you had given yourself, you gave this duty to yourself, the duty to obey a moral law. Can you see? Kant is slightly different. Kant is saying that to be fully autonomous, you have to give yourself a moral law out of a sense of duty. You want to follow this moral law you have given yourself. Okay? And what is this moral law? The moral law is the categorical imperative. Whereas prima facie duty says that it is from your relationship with others, there arise certain duty that you owe to others. And finally, virtue ethics, Samuel. Virtue ethics, correct. It is out of who you are, that is where flows your behavior that is ethical or unethical. Okay? Now, any more question? Any more question? Finally, I already 1 hour. So now I want to tell you, in my personal reflection about all these normative theories, I will tell you what I think. Of course, I have justification for what I'm trying to tell you. Number one, I find that ethical relativism has a very weak justification. In fact, I have said many times it is self-defeating, and those who appeal to ethical relativism appeal out of convenience just to justify their unethical act. They will say that giving and taking of bribe is acceptable because, can you see, everyone is doing it. In this country, everyone is doing it. I do the same, you know. Being unfaithful to your wife is acceptable because you see everyone is doing it. You know, it's acceptable here in this country. So you are just giving an excuse for yourself. You know you are doing something wrong. In terms of ethical egoism, I find this ethical theory also very weak because of the limitation that it has. Ethics itself look at doing good to others, including yourself, not only maximizing self-interest. That is contrary to what an ethical or normative theory is about. So in itself, a lot of philosophers will reject ethical egoism as something that is ethical. It in itself is unethical already. It is not what ethics is about. Utilitarianism is the widely used, but I would say that it can be effectively applied only if the scenario is very narrow. When you have a very narrow option of do this or do that only. When in reality, in business world, in making decision that has to do with the climate, have to do with consumers, have to do with suppliers and so on, complex decision, when you apply like smoking and so on, right? When you apply utilitarianism, you will find that you cannot predict the future of what will happen. Performing this act, you predict something positive will happen and you quantify it. No, you can't do that. It's only in a very narrow situation can you make a decision what is right and what is wrong. Narrow decision making, yes. Apply in real life, very difficult to justify. In terms of Kantian ethics, I will say that the idea of the assumption of human right based on human dignity, man as the only rational human creature that has rationality and morality, I think that is a very strong foundation for human rights. So to treat people with intrinsic worth and to appeal to this universal human rights, I think it is the right thing to do. But to apply the categorical imperative, the assumption of man being of infinite worth, I agree. But to apply the categorical imperative, it leads you to a very difficult situation when you say that there's only one absolute truth at all time, in all places, and all circumstances. So that is not the fact in reality. Like to tell a lie to save a life, you know obviously that's the right thing to do. Prima facie duty, I think that is what we normally would apply. That is what we use all the time. And we know intuitively that it's the right thing to do, because if I do something else, I know everyone else will condemn me. To take care of my child when she's in accident, rather than to sit here to talk to you some further, will be ignoring my most incumbent duty, So everyone will know that, and I will be condemned for not taking care of my child if she's directly involved in accident right now, So intuitively, I think that's a strong relevance to our application in real life, but weak in terms of justification. How do you rationalize it is more difficult. But I think the strongest theory that I would apply in most circumstances would be virtue ethics. I would say things like, what would a virtuous person do in this kind of situation? A virtuous person would be faithful, will not habitually tell lies, will not give bribe as part of his habits, habits and so on. So I think virtue ethics for me is the most appealing among all the normative theory, although in different circumstances, I will pick and choose the other theory as well. Okay, that is my view of normative theories until now. So I have not taught you distributive justice. This is for next week. Distributive justice will be something interesting to study as well. So, any question about normative theories? I have concluded so far. Any question, guys? Let me know if you have any question. I can see 200 over. Okay, not too many. I have 400, so half is here. If you don't have any question, right, I will mention a few things. Number one, on Friday, 8 o'clock, I will have another live session. I won't repeat what I have taught you here. I won't repeat that. I will let the Friday student view this video first, and then I will open to answer any question the student have. And for our tutorial class, I will hold 2 sessions to be fair to both groups, because last week I held the 2 groups together. So I will do tutorial 3 first. For 1 hour, I will spend 15 minutes explaining the tutorial material, and then please prepare and ask me questions. Then for the next tutorial A, my tutorial class I know this is a lecture. The next tutorial I will spend another 15 minutes, and then I will answer any question. Okay, sir, do we need to study the Word document you upload on Padlet, Aristotle, Virtue Ethics? That one is very short only. That is very short. You just take a look. Just now I told you about the two extreme. Too much of a good thing is a bad thing. Too little of a good thing is a bad thing. And you want to maintain in the middle position, somewhere called the golden mean. Like just now about hot temper or cold tempered. Okay, that one, yes, you should take a look. Is there a situation where all normative theories are applicable in all situations, and there is no best theory to imply on? Okay, is there a situation where all normative theories are applicable? In fact, all situations, all normative theory will be applicable. The problem is which one has a stronger argument, has a stronger justification, which normative theory. So this is why there is a debate going on always, what is right and what is wrong. So some people will appeal to certain theories, some people will appeal to other theories. And because each theory has a strength and weaknesses, it is very difficult to arrive at which side you will agree. So we have to make a rational decision, rational justification, how we decide what is right and what is wrong, given the two set of arguments. I don't know how to pronounce your name because it's in Korean, I think. So in all situations, usually you can apply all normative theories, and you can arrive at certain conclusion. And usually the conclusion are the same. Usually they are the same. Only in some cases will they contradict. Some will say this is the right thing to do, some will say it's the wrong thing to do. In the future lecture where I talk about bribery, is the giving and taking of bribe right thing to do or the wrong thing to do? You will see that I will apply all the normative theories and we come to a conclusion. You will find it very interesting. And I'll tell you my opinion why I think one or two of the theory has a stronger justification. Okay, why? Sir, some Padlet video does not have sound, or is it very hard to? And it is very hard. Which one? I don't know. Raphael, Sulaiman. You have to tell me which one. I don't know which one because I have checked all. It seems okay to me, but you have to tell me which one that has no sound. There's something wrong now if there's no sound, right? I think most of the video are on YouTube. Only a few, the very short one that I put on Padlet directly. You have to tell me which one, Raphael. Which video? Send me separately WhatsApp. My WhatsApp number, right? As far as I know, there is no video that has a problem for the student to view. No video. I have checked almost all of them. Maybe I make a mistake. I don't know. Tell me which one. Yeah. Sir, do we need to study excellence of character that you upload in eLearn? Excellence of character has to do with virtue ethics. Yes. Just read it. Any more question? Now, this normative theory that you are studying, these are the foundation. So you'll be applying it in different scenario. In the scenario of whistleblowing, in the scenario of bribery, in the scenario of minimum wages, in the scenario of the environment. Because we are studying business ethics, you see. So also in the scenario of corporate downsizing, of course, I cut out some of these scenarios so that cases the topic that you are studying, so that you reduce the number of topics that you study. The ones that are put on padlet are the ones that have problem. It is a padlet thing, sir. I checked online. The ones that I put on padlet are very short one, you know, Raphael. I will check afterward. Most of them are linked to YouTube. Most of them, I would say. Only very few are hosted on Padlet. Let me check afterward. If it is okay, then I'll put there. Okay, I put a comment on the videos. I will check afterward. Okay, any more question? Now this week is week 3. Week 3 is supposed to be the week all the students already stabilized their tutorial classes. This is the week that I asked the tutors, the lecturers, your respective tutorial lecturers, to form your group. So I myself, I have 2 classes only. I will form my group through an online Excel file so that the student can go in and place their grouping. So your respective tutor must be forming groups for you already this week, because the student must not be moving up and down already. It's supposed to be stabilized this week, week 3. Okay, any more question? I hope you start doing your individual assignment. Some of you send me some of your outline, which is very good. I'm a bit surprised that you really know how to do it. That you have do some research to find the answer of supporting and answer for opposing. Xavier, if say a person is a leader of a country and he has vowed to himself to conduct his duty with integrity, then one day the father is involved in corruption scandal and the leader has the power to let the father get away with it. Assuming the father has been a kind and loving father who has sacrificed his personal interest for the benefit of his children, in your opinion, do you think it is ethical for a leader to save his father from prosecution? Okay, so you are saying that, sir, if a person is a leader of a country and he has vowed to himself to conduct his duty with integrity, in the first place, right, a leader of a country has an obligation to the citizen of the country. And this leader is not absolute in terms of deciding what is right and what is wrong. He is also duty bound. He is also legally bound. There's a constitution that controls the limits of the power of this leader, number one. Then one day, his father, you're telling me that the leader has a father. The father is involved in corruption, right? And you're saying that this leader has the power to exonerate the father, not prosecute the father, right? No, the leader don't have this power. Because there's a law in this country that the legal system will apply. The legal system is independent of who the leader is. Let's say you're the prime minister. The legal structure has an independent administrative body by itself. It is not under the purview of the prime minister, for example. So, in reality, the leader must not interfere with the father's case. When a person behaves unethically or break the law, you have to face the consequence, regardless of whether you're a nice person, you're a kind person, you're a loving father or not. That is beside the point. Breaking the law has its consequences. So, in my opinion, the leader, who is supposed to be, I suppose, the prime minister, has no power to prevent the father who is caught for corruption from being prosecuted. He has no power. And even if he has the power, it would be not right to do so. Can you apply Kantian ethics into this case? Were a leader performing this act of avoiding prosecution for the father by excusing the exercise of legal rights to prosecute the father. If this principle were to be universalized as a law, everyone does the same, then everyone's father, everyone is also a father is a father as well, right? All fathers, when they commit a crime, need not be prosecuted. What do you think? Will rational men accept this? I don't think so. I don't think it is ethical. We have attend this lecture, but you say you won't repeat this lecture on Friday. That means must we attend Friday? No, you don't have to attend the Friday lecture. The Friday lectures are for those who are meant to attend on Friday, because today they have a live session with other lecturer as well. Okay, Samuel. So that's why I should also be available to those students who are on Friday, so that they can ask me question. But because this lecture is already recorded, so they have the opportunity to view this lecture before I go live on Friday, on the Friday. Okay, I hope this answer your question, Samuel. Okay, any more question, guys? Okay, y'all can WhatsApp me if you have any issue with your studies. Of course, there are quite a lot of you, so I may answer a bit later, but usually I'll answer within 24 hours. If I have not answered you in 24 hours, it means that I have missed your message. You have to text me again, sir, just to remind you, something like that, to remind me about your message. Because I receive a lot of WhatsApp messages, it may push your message down. What music is that? I don't know. Can I hear your music? I think it's the radio lah, Christy. It must be the radio in the background. So the radio is always 24 hours running. Okay, guys, thank you very much for attending the lecture. This lecture may be one of the hardest because it has to do with Kantian ethics. If you are still not sure, there are some very good videos on YouTube. Just go to YouTube and find categorical imperative, and you can get some good explanation there. Next week, we will study the last of the theories. This has to do with distributive justice. There are basically three main theories: the utilitarian, libertarian, and Rawls theory of distributive justice. You will find it interesting. Then that's all for all the theories that you will learn. And subsequently, we will be applying all these theories into, for example, CSR, for example, bribery, for example, whistleblowing, and so on. So different topics. There are a few very more difficult topics which I'm not teaching you because I want to streamline a little bit so that you can have more time to study more in depth. Individual assignment topics we pick ourselves. Jonathan, your individual assignment you pick yourself based on who your tutor is. If you are my student, I have only two articles that you can pick from. One is about toxic culture, I think, and the other one is about career. So each tutor has two topics. So you pick one. You are free to choose anyone. Okay. My phone number 193583043. Okay, so do not call me. Do not call me. Just WhatsApp me. Okay, WhatsApp me. Don't call me. Yes, next week will be YouTube Live again. Then the subsequent week, it will be a self-study. Next week will be YouTube Live again. Study distributive justice. Study week 4 distributive justice. Okay. Then week 5, you self-study on CSR because the CSR topics would be covered in your 2 tutorial classes subsequently. As I explained in my last lecture. So, so not to keep you to back to back, you cannot breathe too many classes. Okay, guys, thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, I'll see you again next Tuesday. I'll see you again next Tuesday. Bye. I'll see you again next Tuesday. I will cover distributive justice and okay. Okay, good. I will see you again. Thank you. Any issue, please WhatsApp me. Don't call me. Have a nice day. Take care. Okay, great. Great, huh? Thank you, thank you, thank you. Next week, we will see each other again on Tuesday. Try to be on time. Help your friends if your friends find it difficult to follow. Thank you, all. Thank you. Thank you, Raphael. Thank you, Joyce. Terence. Okay. I'm so used to YouTube Live now. Thank you. Bye. Thank you. Thank you. What for you call my dog? She can't talk. No. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks. Bye. Bye. Gucci. Don't look at me. Yeah, fat girl. Okay. Bye. Thank you. She's always at my feet. Thank you. Thank you. Have a nice day. Thank you. Okay. See, there is Uncle Chi. Say bye bye. Bye bye. Say bye bye. Hmm? Who's that? Who's that? Who's that? Who's that? Hmm? No. No. Yeah. See, I want to see you. Long live Gucci. Hmm?
YouTube live is how long?
Yeah.
How many minutes?
Thank you. Okay.